Okay, are we live?
Jeez Louise.
What in the world? Go live. Okay, we're live, but we're not live on all of our platforms. So there we go. And I think we are now. Maybe not.
25th
Hey,
time
everybody.
is a charm.
Okay, we're not going to get it to go live off of this platform, but that's all right. So we're simulcasting to quite a few platforms here. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. As you can see, I am joined with Kristen Megan tonight.
Hello.
I like to call her my partner in crime, according to the government, and my military counterpart. You guys,
Slumber party sisters.
Oh yeah, we're having another slumber party. I think the last time we came at Everybody Live, we were also having a slumber party, but we were working up in Newaygo, and we're in Kristen's studio, hence the green screen. Kristen does a lot of media, you guys know that, and so we're in her studio tonight, and we've been working. I've had some phone conferences, and Kristen and I did a actually docuseries, right? We did an interview for a docuseries that's coming out that you guys are not going to want to miss. I think there's seven parts to the series or something like that.
I think 9 actually. I think he said 9.
All kinds of experts. And so we were actually interviewed about the face mask issue and OSHA and all that good stuff. So this is going to be something that we will definitely inform you all about. It's going to actually go live off of the internet. It's not going to be coming at you off of any television station. I can't imagine anybody would actually show that. But so we've been together today doing some interviews, and I just wanted to come on here live because there is a lot of information that is being circulated about me. Shockingly, I know Kristen has been through this herself many times, and so she's joining me tonight just for some backup. Yeah, we have a little wine tonight because it's just that kind of night. But there is a guy who has made it his mission to personally discredit and destroy me. His name is Adam Grant. Many of you have seen the posts, the fact-checking, the countering, the discrediting things that this Adam Grant, he calls himself the science guy. I think that would be Bill Nye's claim to fame, but Adam thinks that he's the science guy too. So this guy has taken it upon himself, and he has spent hours and hours and hours just trying to discredit me. It's shocking, actually, when you see how much time he has put into trying to take me out, discredit me, and
it's not just shocking, it's disturbing. The amount of time an individual would take to attempt to discredit or demonize an individual without even reaching out to them for comment or clarification. That's what disturbs me.
Yeah, and it is disturbing. I'll be really honest with you. And I know many of you have seen the hit pieces that this guy has put out on me and have sent them to me. The latest one that he just did, he's now addressing me personally, my personal Facebook page. It was just fact-checking Tammy Clark. Now it is fact-checking Tammy K. Harima Clark, and a video from a group called Stand Up Michigan that Kristen and I were featured in, and one that I did from back in the summer. So I normally just ignore this stuff because it's just, trolls and haters going to hate, right? And they usually attack people that they don't agree with, and they try to make an issue out of it. And I just don't respond because, to be quite honest with you, I have always taken the approach that my reputation, my credentials, and my expertise speaks for itself. And I have a great reputation in the industry, in my fields, and created quite a monopoly, actually, in the region that I live in the business world. So I've got lots of awards and things like that speak to all of my accomplishments. But I just wanted to come on here because this guy works for Apple. He is in the computer tech world, and we know what's going on with big tech right now, and it's not good, and it's scary. And I just felt like I needed to rebut some of this because he is downright guilty of libel. Everything that he's put out has been in print. I've not seen any video, so he's not speaking it, but he's putting it in print. And it is not only completely erroneous, he's lying. He's intentionally cherry picking through my credentials, twisting my words. And this guy is not a subject matter expert like Kristen and I are on the respiratory protection programs and pathogen protection and PPE and all this.
My glasses are clear.
He's a techie guy. Yeah, I know my glasses are glaring a little bit too.
I'm blind, but I'm still here.
So, okay, I'm going to read through this and let you kind of rebut this. So anyway, guys, I just felt like I needed to answer this because so many people are sending me this. Did you see this? Oh my gosh, Tammy, can you answer this? I've got a lot of people who aren't listening to me because of the things you say because of this guy. Well, okay, so it's time to do some rebutting. First things first. This guy's name is Adam Grant. He works at Apple in California. Okay, he is now claiming that the video from Stand Up Michigan is making the rounds on social media, and it's the latest to make claims against wearing masks, and particularly the government mandates to do so. He cited, first things first, I'm just going to go through all of his claims, and I'm going to totally discredit him, basically, because he's not the expert. And Kristen's joining me here as backup, which is great. I appreciate that. My wine drinking.
I'm here for the wine. No.
Exactly. All right, so I made the statement in one of my videos. If God wanted our nose and mouth to be covered, we wouldn't have been born with a nose that can breathe air in and a mouth that can breathe air out or exhale, right? Most people are nose breathers. Most people do inhale through their nose, exhale through their mouth. He goes on to say, Tammy K. Harriman-Clark clearly does not understand that exhalation and inhalation is mutually possible in both the nose and the mouth. Actually, I quite well understand that. I think that goes without saying, Adam, but the fact that you have to point that out, it tells us what were we just talking about in the interview that we did? And the guy said, when they can't attack the facts, they attack the person. And that's what this guy's doing. Okay, but let's continue because it actually gets quite entertaining. So here's your entertainment for tonight.
I do have a popcorn maker if you would like me to.
We're going to need it here because it gets really good. Okay, so then he claims in the first 6 minutes or so, it's mainly devoted to Harriman-Clark lauding her expertise on the subject of PPE. Well, yes, because if I didn't explain to you what my credentials are and who I am and how I'm working in these fields, you wouldn't know much about me. Why would you listen to me, right? And I made the statement that doctors, meaning these doctors who stand up and tell you that you can be wearing a mask because they wear a surgical mask all day, so you can wear a mask all day. I actually made the statement that they're not certified or licensed in the fields of PPE as I am.
That's correct.
I stand by that. That is true. In fact, I've gotten more forceful about this. I am not against doctors. And Kristen and I have talked about this on our shows and on our lives. We very much respect doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers.
And work with them. One of our closest new friends we have a group chat with is an MD. We have great respect for MDs.
Yes.
I don't want to hijack what you're saying, but I wanted to point out when you're making the claim. So under OSHA law, let's say that there is a fatality or a death due to injury or illness. Someone got cancer and died, like Monsanto, court cases, or somebody fell in a manhole and died. Either way, on these adjudication processes and in the legal process, you have to be an OSHA credentialed person. Just because you're a doctor does not automatically slide you in as OSHA credentialed.
Right.
You have to have a minimum of 4 years experience working in an occupational safety and health field. That's the minimum. And none of these doctors, unless they're occupational health doctors, have those credentials.
And that's what makes Kristen and I both court-approved subject matter experts. So I have to address this guy and say, are you a court-approved subject matter expert in PPE and respiratory protection that qualifies you to even dare to get in the same ring with me and challenge me? What are your credentials? You're a tech guy? You have a biology degree? Who cares? No, actually, he said he has a liberal arts degree. Oh, even better. He's got an art degree and he thinks he can get in the ring with me and challenge me. So I want to keep going on this because I'm telling you, I have even gotten more forceful lately. And I stand by my statements even more so these days when doctors and nurses and healthcare workers stand up there and they tell you, you can wear a mask. I wear a mask all day long. We're going to get into the HVAC and the ASHRAE standards and all of that in a minute. But I've even started saying to them, you are outside of your lane. In fact, you're so outside of your lane that it should be considered malpractice.
I agree.
Because they are not credentialed on pathogen protection. Doctors heal. They know medicine and they heal. Pathogen protection experts, PPE experts, respiratory protection experts protect you. These doctors and nurses use the PPE that they use because people like Kristen and I come in, we test the atmospheres, we test the environments, we see what sort of exposures or hazards that they're dealing with, and we tell them what kind of PPE to wear and why. The doctors don't and nurses don't even really understand it all. All they know is once a year they got to get their stress test or their fit test and their PPE. They've got to have everything re-inspected once a year. And there's just a lot to it, and they don't understand the whole program. And so I stand by that statement that these doctors are not certified and they're not licensed. They do not know what I know about PPE. So they're outside of their lane speaking to it. I'm just going to stand by that one and let that one ride. All right. Let's start, he says, by noting that Tammy's position on face masks is not in line officially with OSHA.
Please let me comment on this.
Okay, take it away.
Okay. That should be reversed. The mask mandates are not in line with OSHA. Yes. See, the OSHA Respiratory Protection Act was signed into law around 1979. Now, you can date back to like 100 years before that, when people were doing masonry and making clay huts and things like that. They recognized people were having respiratory issues during that time period, and they would use like cheesecloth. The whole idea of needing to filter out contaminants from the body is over 100 years old. But the science and laws that are solidified in determining these current standards, again, started in 1979. So, little fun fact, prior to COVID, so let's go to December 2019. If myself or Tammy, as consultants for a business or being hired by a business, if we ever put a mass population or all employees in masks and told them that that's going to protect them against a virus in either direction transmitting, we would be fired, fined, and we would have an OSHA citation that follows us.
That's right. So what we have been saying is that what OSHA's doing is completely revisionist. Yes. This is the whole point, Adam. OSHA has backtracked on their own standards and their own regulations. Just because you're a Google warrior does not mean you can come at me with something that OSHA is saying right now. I have been an OSHA credentialed professional and an expert for almost 20 years. Nobody knows the OSHA standards and regulations like Kristen and I do.
And I have almost 19. March will be 19 years.
Yeah. We know darn well what OSHA says, because he goes on and on to say OSHA generally recommends that employers encourage workers to wear face coverings at work. To what Kristen said, let's just rewind 1 year ago. If 1 year ago, OSHA were to generally recommend that employers were to encourage all of their workers to wear face coverings at work because there's a virus going around, that person who wrote that would be fired for incompetence.
I really believe
it's
especially
unreal.
If there was a contracted illness based on that false sense of protection, just like here in Michigan during the Flint water crisis, you're now seeing indictments. And I fully believe we would be facing jail time.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. Because everything we have learned, Kristen is a senior industrial hygienist. She's military trained. That's why I say she's my military counterpart, because she's done a lot of the same work that I've done, only my work has been in the private industry. Her work has been in the military. And there's certain things she's done that I haven't so much.
And vice versa.
But we both work with lots of different clients and industries. And the whole point is, everything we have ever been trained and educated and certified on flies in the face of what is happening right now. So the government itself, the agency itself that is supposed to be protecting people, is now turning on the very employees that they're supposed to be protecting. And they're putting very burdensome requirements on employers. And this is why I started standing up and speaking out in the first place, because of what I saw coming out from OSHA, because this agency has become so revisionist.
Should I tweet this live to him right now?
Yes, you should.
I can do that, because this needs to end.
Yes.
It's to the point now it's harmful to you and it's harmful to the American people. Actually, people worldwide getting disinformation from someone not credentialed.
And he's calling out Stand Up Michigan as if Stand Up Michigan has anything to do with anything. I mean, this is just ridiculous. This guy is trying to start a war. And the things that he is saying is very, very wrong. I've actually got my attorney involved. She's going to be sending him a cease and desist letter if he doesn't knock it off, because this has gone to a whole different level. And the amount of time that he's put into this is a little bit scary and unsettling. So, all right, so let's keep going here. Yeah, we know what OSHA is saying. And my position on face masks is not in line with that, because OSHA has trained me for many years. All my education and all my training and all my certification, OSHA has said exactly the opposite of what they're saying now. In fact, we've taken decades worth of science and data and we've thrown it under the rug. OSHA's own respiratory protection program from 1979 quotes those NIOSH studies that prove you do not just enforce a one-size-fits-all blanket mask mandate. It's not only illegal, but it's unhealthy and it's unsafe. Okay, let's keep going. So then he says, Tammy did not cite any of her experience, nor could we find any from her online portfolio related to virology, immunology, or her ability to read legal language. Well, I've been in a courtroom just as much as I've been in a classroom teaching, which, by the way, I taught at the university level for a couple of years. And everything I have learned and everything I've been trained on, from my medical certifications to my PPE and pathogen protection education, is all about virology and immunology. There's not an actual certification on virology that I can cite you. It just goes to show you that this guy does not understand anything about the work that we do or our career fields, because it's all encompassing. It's like industrial hygiene for Kristen. Everything that focuses with industrial hygiene is protecting from toxins, toxicants, the chemical exposures, whatever. Do I need to tell you that she's learned virology and immunology as part of that? No, I don't think I need to point that out. It kind of goes without saying. It's part of the career field. So because you can't find something, you feel you can discredit me because you look and you can't find a particular certificate or certification on something. First of all, Adam, you're not even certified or credentialed in any of these career fields. So you had to make a whole bunch of phone calls to ask people how to discredit me.
I just poked the bear, so.
Well, we've been poking for about 8 months, so it's all right. But the whole point is, because you are not credentialed and you're not an expert in this field, you can't even ask the right questions. You don't even know what questions to ask about the credentialing and the profession. So you have to call people and ask them questions and then hope they give you the right answer so you know how to come at me.
I'm sorry. I was half paying attention while I was trying to tag
poking
this
the
gentleman.
bear. She's poking the bear.
One thing, this is something in our professions that we face all the time. I'm going to give you an example. I am a senior industrial hygienist. I work primarily in the field of industrial hygiene. Do you know that an IH and an environmental health and safety are almost the same thing? The only difference is the amount of hours of chemistry that you need to be an IH. But I can tell you, as someone with 4 science degrees, 95% of what I know has been taught in the field. So this isn't about degrees or certifications. This is about you out in the field, testing an array of different work sites and hazards to make decisions. And as an industrial hygienist, or I've even been hired to fill slots as an environmental health and safety professional. See, they kind of interchange. And what you need to understand is that under these fields, we can cover hazardous noise, ergonomics, safety, impact hazards, compact hazards, inhalation hazards, radiation.
Any exposure hazards.
Basically
right?
anything that can harm the human body in a work environment. But that science in the work environment still exists in the home. See, if we say, oh, do you work around lead? It's a neurotoxin. If you're working on lead in your garage or at home, it's still a neurotoxin. So everyone wants to come at us like you deal with occupational settings. Correct. But the science exists in all platforms. And that's what you need to understand, is that if Tammy's sitting here saying she's credentialed in the field of respiratory protection, she doesn't need a degree that says respiratory protection, bachelor's of science. It doesn't work like that. No. It's a subcategory of our professions. And I'm standing here as someone, again, with multiple degrees in this field. I have learned way more outside of school than I ever learned sitting in a seat. Guaranteed. And my husband is in the same profession, and he will tell you the exact same thing.
Yeah, and OSHA, so I've been in the field nearly 20 years. OSHA actually will accept field experience over a degree.
Oh, hello. I don't mean to keep interrupting you. One of my former colleagues at a company I'm not allowed to say that I worked at due to classification stuff. My colleague is now the vice president of a huge, huge company, making over $200,000 a year. 0 degrees. 29 years of experience in the field. See, you can learn this by it being your sole job. And Tammy does have a degree. But my point is, People think that you just have to have all these extra letters by your name or specific degrees in the things you're talking about. Personally, once again, I'm telling you, what I've learned has been in the field. You don't learn how to conduct health risk assessments in different, genres, whether it's construction, medical, or working at a plant that makes airplane parts. That stuff you don't learn in a classroom, folks.
That's right. That's absolutely true. So I've got my education and my credentialing, but really where it all comes together and where you really understand it and learn how to apply it is in the field.
Yes.
Working with the men and women in the field who are doing the jobs, and you're there to protect them from, whatever hazard or pathogen it might be. It depends on the industry that you're in, right? Okay. So he's really hung up on this credentialing. So I'm going to go through my credentials with you. But first, I'm going to keep going through this because this is so damaging what he's put out there. And I'm having so many people send it to me. And the truth is so important to expose that when somebody goes on a tirade or a rant like this, and it's this damaging, I think it's important to address it and just shut it down and stop it. Okay. He goes on to say, my current homepage, that would be my business website, because you all know that I have been a consultant for the last almost 15 years. And I've owned my own health, safety, and compliance consulting firm. And I've worked for lots of different companies, from construction firms to manufacturing facilities, hospital systems. Spectrum Health here in Grand Rapids is a huge client of mine. Meyer, huge client of mine, all over the country. So I've gotten a lot of clients around the country, national clients in lots of different industries, right? So when I took the position with Stand Up Michigan as executive director, I actually had to put my website under construction, because what was happening was people were reaching out to me. Once I did the very first mask video in, I think it was July of last year. Was that July? I think so. I can't remember. Once I did that, people were reaching out to me by the hundreds a day from around this country from my website. Well, I had pretty much walked away from most of my consulting work in 2020 because the whole darn state was shut down and nobody was working. And I took the position with Stand Up Michigan as the executive director. So that was my focus, was on freeing the state from the grip of tyranny that we were all living under Governor Gretchen Whitmer. So I wasn't looking for more work. I didn't need more work. I actually put my business under construction and on hold. And I talked to most of my clients. I did a little bit, but I just needed to shut it down because I couldn't keep up with the amount of emails coming at me by the hundreds a day. And because you have the same thing. Yeah. People from around the world reaching out to us. And so he goes on to say that, my page is shut down, so it's somehow discrediting to me. But what he doesn't understand is what I'm actually all about is more than just health and safety.
I think, weren't we driving down to Texas to do the Constitutional Rights Summit when you decided to suspend?
Yes.
I was in the car when she explained why she was shutting. She was getting so much work.
Yes.
And that's where we kind of like
the demand for the COVID stuff.
I have to touch you because Tammy gets it.
Yeah.
We get each other. We are two people who work for ourselves and can't be fired. So we're
soul sisters. While
there is a whole bunch of industrial hygienists and EHS pros talking to us and messaging us and calling us. Thank you. We're sick to our stomach. Can't believe this is happening. But this is their livelihood.
Yeah.
My husband lives in my house and he won't even talk about it. And trust me, I'm up his butt every day about it. But my point is that we get it. And I thought that when I saw this hit piece, I was just like, the fact that this guy didn't even reach out to you is really speaks to his inability to do research about you.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in the car with you driving to Texas when you said, I have to suspend my website because I'm getting so much work. I can't do it. And I remember.
Yeah. So, just because you put a website under construction does not discredit me in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it means I'm so successful that I can't keep up. But he made a couple of statements on here that I have to clarify. So he basically said, my cached version of my website includes 3 testimonials, 2 of which are from individuals bearing my same last name. That's a lie. I probably have 10 or 15 credentials, letters of recommendation and testimonials. And they are from clients, big name clients that you would all know if I was going to drop names again, from all over this country. And 2 of them happen to be family members of mine who are also very successful. I have a brother who hired me to do some safety training for his company, OSHA training. And he has got a business that is a multi-million-dollar business, nationwide firm. They're huge and they're very successful. And basically he said, Tammy's the best safety trainer that we have found. He's my brother. And he was sincere about that. What's wrong with that? How many companies don't have a little nepotism going on in them? That somehow discredits me because my brother, who's highly successful, owns a nationwide multi-million-dollar firm, hires me, his sister, to come in and do safety training for them. Somehow that's discrediting to me. Okay. I have another brother, highly successful, again, in his own firm. Same thing. He owned a company, construction company. I did some trainings for him and I worked with him in some investment real estate. That's another thing this guy seems to have a problem with. All my credentials. The fact that I'm pretty successful in a lot of areas really seems to irk him. Yep, I have a real estate license. I do some investment real estate. I own my own properties for investment reasons. And somehow this is a problem for him. I don't get it. So anyway, I want to just go on here because he said, reading on my LinkedIn profile, he was unable to find anything that would qualify me as an expert on the body, immunology, or virology, as I have stated. And again, I just want to tell him, so you're now an expert. And so you think you can read through my credentials and understand them because you're such a highly credentialed professional in these fields yourself. Well, let me just run through my list of credentials for you that are not all listed. Some of them are listed on there. They're not all listed. And these are just a few, honestly. If I were to go back 20 years over all the certifications and the credentials that I have obtained, guys, we'd be here for an hour. Kristen's the same way. We just.
I have 34. The only reason I know is because I always have to submit my CV to all the court cases I act on as an expert witness. So
yeah.
I always have to make sure it's up to date. So I have 34. So
yeah, right. So I get it. So I just wrote down a few here that are probably the most applicable to this. Number one, I do have a bachelor's degree. That's a really big deal to him. And it's not in art. It's not a liberal art degree. That's, not really a very employable degree. It's a business degree. I'm a business owner. I own several businesses. I also have a concentration in a construction health and safety degree. He left that out.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he left out my degree, period. Okay. I am also a certified asbestos inspector and instructor, certified through the state of Michigan. I am a certified lead inspector and instructor, not just instructor, inspector. That means I am highly trained in the toxicology of the neurotoxin. Like Kristen mentioned, it's a neurotoxin.
You gotta take your devices and poke the balls. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
That's another
That's the
thing.
point.
I know that I'm friends with Tammy, but you need to understand that my level of integrity is like super high. And if I ever thought she was lying, plus when you're in this career field, you know when someone's BSing their way through it, because when you know certain verbiage and acronyms that are deeply embedded in the standards,
yeah,
I have seen her credentials. They are real, folks. This is why this is hilarious to me.
Me too.
So, before you go on with your credentials, that loud noise you heard was my husband. I want to show you something. So Adam, actually for a fundraiser that Tammy did, because she's also the executive director of Stand Up Michigan, I also have a side business and a side hustle. See, I make floral bouquets out of wood flowers.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. See, this is part of my art therapy for my PTSD. Does that mean I'm a crafter who claims to be a scientist? No, it means I'm a scientist who has a hobby or other business ventures. So you can have multidisciplinary skills, FYI.
And I hope you do. I hope you're a well-rounded enough person that you're successful in lots of different things. That does not discredit
Side
you.
note, not taking any orders currently. I'm really busy. No.
Yeah, she does beautiful work, by the way. Okay, I am an OSHA credentialed environmental health, safety, and compliance instructor in both construction and general industry, which Adam really had a problem with. He really discredited that. Anybody can be a trainer. No, you can't.
No.
You have to have had 5 years minimum of direct supervision for the safety, health, and compliance of a company in order to be able to just take this class. That's not discrediting by any means. All right. I'm a certified density technology specialist. Really what that means is I'm a glorified radiation safety and nuclear Troxler gauge operator and instructor. Kristen's certifications are probably very similar, radiation safety officer through the military. But when you're working in the field of density technology, you're measuring the soils and the density of the soil, and you're working with nuclear Troxler gauges. So there's a high level of radiation safety training. So like I said, private industry, military, same training, basically.
I just want to give an example of that too. In our professions, okay, until COVID, a lot of people have never heard of our professions because we're very behind the scenes. But true. I'll just give you an example. I worked at a VA hospital and we had to recover an underground storage tank and it was leaking. So Tammy knows what I'm talking about because you have to do soil grid sampling. You have to calculate how much you have to sample. You have to determine if you have to air sample if anything's leaching out. So when you're doing soil remediation, do they need respiratory protection?
Exactly.
Then you conduct a health risk assessment. Then you have to deal with environmental permits. And when she's talking about the radiation aspect, that's another reason. Because of things that happened a long time ago or improper disposal of hazardous materials or radioactive waste can cause contamination in the soil. And that's where the density stuff comes in. You have to understand how to use certain devices or probes of different aspects of radiation.
They have to be calibrated gauges. You have to have the radiation safety training because you're working with a nuclear device. I mean, there's a lot to it. You see how our professions
are like a web? It's like Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, you're right.
There's so much to it, you guys. And I get it. If you're not in it, I get the confusion. But the point here is you should ask. You should ask for clarification.
Exactly. I'm going to go on just for Adam's sake.
I'll take another sip here.
I'm a certified hazardous materials supervisor and instructor. I'm a certified HAZWOPER. I know that sounds like
Me
cheeseburger.
Too, boo.
HAZWOPER instructor. That means hazardous waste operations and emergency response. Okay, there's a very high level of toxicology, radiation, training and understanding. This is very, very heavily involved with the Department of Transportation. So a lot of my certifications are through the DOT and a lot of my certifications are through OSHA. And some of them, like my asbestos and my lead, are through the EPA. So Adam, you're not just going to find a college sort of degree with this when these are government issued and regulatory agency issued certifications.
Just like RCRA. The Resource Conservation and Recovery Act is more EPA leaning. That's another thing. See, our career fields, like I said, we don't have the same titles, but it's pretty damn close. And that's why our career fields intertwine. That's how we know we can speak in our own language. We can speak acronyms for 3 hours and we'll both know what we're talking about.
Exactly. All right. So, and then the last one I want to address is the medical training because I worked as a ski patroller. Again, I'm a modern day Ernest Hemingway. What can I say?
I know.
I worked as a ski patroller. My kids grew up on the slopes. When I moved back to Michigan, I had to find a way to survive the cold. And I thought, I'm not going to be miserable. We're going to make it fun. So anyway, I joined the ski patrol. Kids grew up on the slopes. In order to be a ski patroller, you have to become what's called an outdoor emergency care technician or specialist. It is a certification, and I had doctors going through this class with me. Usually, ski patrollers are pretty highly credentialed and professional people in their own right. And so there were a lot of different professionals taking the classes with me, and it is no joke. The doctors that I took this course, I mean, it's almost a year long. And it was like taking some sort of like CPR class on steroids. I mean, they actually said, this OEC certification, this outdoor emergency, it's emergency medicine. Only you've got the heightened hazards of being outdoors. How are you going to make a tourniquet? Go find some sticks. I mean, it's all this kind of thing, right? And so they actually told us this certification is your first 2 years in med school. No lie. So I've been through a lot of this emergency medicine training. That's how I understand the body's systems, the muscular systems, musculoskeletal systems, neurological systems, cardiovascular systems, cardiopulmonary systems, you name it, I understand it. I've been through this training and I've gotten the certifications and I've treated people. I treated a little girl who had broken her spine in 7 places on the slopes in the freezing cold weather and in blood and all kinds of terrible conditions. So it's practicing emergency medicine in a heightened environment and a much more hazardous environment. So to say that I don't
have cold stress.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. With cold stress and everything
Which is another aspect of our professions, heat and cold stress, folks.
Exactly. So I'm going to leave it at that because this guy so cherry picked through my credentials and made me sound like some sort of hack, some sort of wannabe. And I just had to come back at him because when he did the last one, he made it personal. He's using my personal name and he's talking about Stand Up Michigan. And so I'm not going to let that go. I'm pretty good at just saying, yeah, whatever. I
want to step in. Actually,
Tammy
is doing this because I agreed that we should do this. Not that I'm her boss. That's not what I'm saying. But as someone who's a military whistleblower, and I've been attacked by people actually impersonating me and trying to discredit me, and I just laugh because I spent $70,000 in 3 years in federal courts and testified in front of Congress. So I'm pretty sure that I have whistleblower protections and I'm not full of BS. But the important aspect of Tammy doing this is that when you have people who attack you or try to demonize you or discredit you, and it's not just your average Joe Blow. This person is highly embedded in working in technology. I looked up his credentials based on his own LinkedIn. And Adam works for Apple. So honestly, based on these disturbing personal attacks without, again, reaching out to Tammy, I'm worried that she could be digitally attacked, meaning he could get into her personal information. He could attempt to alter any of her profiles. That's not far-fetched because any person who's spending this much time to discredit someone whose sole profession is designed to protect people, I can't even explain how disturbing that is.
Well, and he's been doing this for 8 months.
Yeah.
These attacks, he just put out another one, and he's got to be spending hundreds of hours on this. I mean, over the last 8 years. I think we should
send him like some knitting stuff and say, get a hobby.
Absolutely. Attacking Tammy Clark apparently is his hobby. So one of the things that he said was that my trainings are a little more industry involved, just a little, than CPR training and a certified babysitter. And then he goes on to list a lot of my clients, which should speak for itself. My work speaks for itself. And then he goes on to talk about the OSHA training. He had to call OSHA because he knows nothing about OSHA. So he had to actually call OSHA to ask OSHA about all of this, but he didn't know the right questions to ask because he has no clue.
I'm sorry. It's funny because people assume, I think we are one of the few medical professions, because it is a medical profession, it's preventive health, that you don't have to be licensed. So there's no Laura here in Michigan. There's no directory in which you're going to find our credentials. It doesn't work like that.
No, exactly. So he goes on to then say that mine is not an actual occupation, and that being a strategic partner for the Red Cross is just a corporate volunteer program.
Can I just add in here? I also am a Red Cross ambassador, and I teach AED and CPR to college students. I guess I'm just a glorified first aid.
I guess. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is what we're talking about here. This is the level of crazy and the attacks that we're talking about. He doesn't even understand. Being a strategic partner means I offered CPR classes, first aid classes, outdoor emergency survival classes where I could take people outdoors, winter camping, because again, I'm an OEC certified tech. And so I did a lot of this through my business, through the Red Cross, to people all over the country. And so it was a strategic partnership that my business offered. And I had instructors all over the country. So it was, anyway. Moving on.
It's funny, but it's not, because again.
Exactly.
For those, first of all, I don't think this guy understands the amount of support you have and I have.
Yeah.
And so if he even tries to go after me, good luck, bro. I have more Bitcoin to take you down than you have anything. That's a side content. But
right.
this is not my first. This is not my first rodeo. I've had my own attacks. My people who are not credentialed to speak out about my credentials. My credentials have faced a court of law. So that's why I'm here supporting Tammy, because I told her, I said, I've been through this too. And it's sad because these people want to thrive off of a time where they can potentially profit or gain some, as the teens say, clout, in exposing other people that don't need to be exposed.
And this is not just little attacks. This is very well coordinated. He spent a lot of time on this, and it's happened multiple times now. And he's upped the ante to the point where Kristen encouraged me to do something about this. So I did get my attorney involved, and he will be getting a cease and desist letter sent to his corporation, by the way.
HR.
I'm pulling them into this because he's naming them. He puts it right out there who he works for, and he's involving them. So the last thing that I really want to leave this on is about COVID-19 itself. I want you guys to understand he's saying that my claims that 99% of people who get this virus or who test positive for COVID-19 are going to be just fine. I stand by that. We know that. We now know, especially since the CDC has come out and claimed that their PCR test cycling needs to be reduced because it was creating way too many false positives. The CDC just claimed this. The CDC also allowed flu cases to be lumped into COVID. So it's like
assumed
everything's COVID now.
Assumed cases count.
And so there was a statement in here that I said the new cases that are being tested are not new. A lot of these are people who have had the virus already and have the antibodies in them. So this causes the test to show positive again. I stand by that because the creator of the PCR test himself, Kerry Mullins, actually stated this. Where do you think I got that information from? I got that, and I'm not just pulling this out of my...
How dare you read, Tammy?
Yeah, I am actually getting this information from the creator of the PCR test himself, Kerry Mullins, who stated, this test should never be used for diagnosis because it is way too sensitive. It will pick up on any coronavirus in the body. And if you have antibodies for a different strain, you'll test positive and it will show that you're positive for this strain. So this is why I said it. I stand by it because the creator of the PCR test himself has made these statements. And we now know the CDC has fallen in line and they're backing this up as well. So I just felt like, should we go talk about this one? Let's talk about the urban legend that oxygen, a flammable gas, is pumped into emergency rooms. Okay. Urban legend.
I am generally a very professional person when we're talking about our career fields, but this is hilarious to me. It's hilarious to me when people who have no idea about our professions just don't ask us. Because if he had reached out to you, you could have provided him the ASHRAE standards that are viewed as consensus standards. Consensus standards, if you're not familiar with OSHA, they have this like catch-all regulation. It's called the General Duty Clause. I'll give you an example. The NFPA that deals with fire safety, the NFPA is not a law, but it's a consensus standard that is held as law under the OSHA General Duty Clause. So ASHRAE standards that deal with architectural and engineering type controlling of HVAC environments, that is 100% true.
Yeah.
I, working for one of the largest VA hospitals in Chicago, sat in the surgical suites, had to make sure that the oxygen pumping into the room did not exceed certain parameters dependent on the type of anesthetic gases that are also wired in, because they're wired in right by the beds. And I not only had to air sample and have something called an LEL meter, lower explosion limit detecting, a 4-gas meter that is trying to make sure that there's no explosive parameters in the room and that the oxygen content is too enriched or deficient. See, it's a science that deals with math and calculations.
Yeah.
So and Tammy, you're telling the truth here.
And after I did the first video in July, I tried to keep it really simple because when you start talking about ASHRAE standards and how OSHA requires that surgical rooms are kept at a certain temperature and a certain humidity level for infection control. So we have positive air, we have negative air. Those are terms that we use in these particular industries, in these surgical suites and surgical centers. And not everybody understands them. And if I start talking real technical like that, people, just goes over their head. So I just kept it really simple, just tried to explain there's increased airflow because of the temperature reduction. There's increased oxygenation in these rooms. And I have had people like Adam try to take those words and make an issue out of it. And I have had a couple of people healthcare workers say to me, well, obviously they're not pumping oxygen into the room or we'd all blow up. Okay, Kristen just referenced an LEL.
I'm going to show you this real quick. It's a little blurry. Hold on. Bear with me. Is it not going to work because of my lighting?
Maybe down.
I'm just going to read it to you. Go to ASHRAE.org. ASHRAE. RAE being spelled RAE. ASHRAE.org. Conditioning for the environment of critical care hospital operating rooms. This will go over everything for you.
It's all about the HVAC for hospital settings. And this is all based on OSHA requirements as well. So when I'm making general statements, it's because I'm not going to get uber techie. These videos are already long enough. I'm just trying to get the basic information out there so people understand. Doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers work in a very, very carefully controlled micro environment. and even at that, they're only supposed to wear their surgical mask for a very short period of time. They have to change them out every time they sneeze or whatever, and they have to take them on and off. It's called donning and doffing very particularly. And even at that, healthcare workers still spread infectious disease, flus, and things like that like crazy. But they're all wearing masks. So if your mask works so well, how are you spreading viruses, right? There's been studies, randomized controlled test studies done on this. And so we know that if people, doctors and nurses, a lot of them complain of sore throats and headache and getting lightheaded and dizzy, wearing their surgical mask, and that's in a very carefully controlled microenvironment. Why would we think that we could take somebody in a factory or on a construction project where it's 85 degrees and high humidity and throw them in a face mask? That's not a carefully controlled microenvironment. Their oxygen levels are not higher. Temperature levels are not lower. That person is going to really struggle. And that was the point of my whole conversation that Adam had to take issue with and try to take little words I said and spin it into something, because he's not an expert in any of this, so he doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. So I appreciate your attention. We've got a lot of people watching tonight, but I felt it was important because there's a lot of this stuff getting spread around and people don't know what to believe. So when yahoos like Adam Grant take it upon themselves to try to discredit you, and they put that much time and effort into it, they know just enough to be dangerous. And they can spread information that people that don't know the behind the scenes stuff, like Kristen and I do, they might believe it. And so we just felt like he's taken this to a whole new level. We needed to come on here and address this and just explain some things and expose this whole thing, rebut him, discredit him, expose him for the troll, obviously, that he is. And he will be hearing from my attorney at his workplace.
And I just want to reiterate that I don't even want to get into it, but I just want to give you an example of what I went through. So I'm a military whistleblower. I simultaneously blew the whistle on 2 major issues that impacted human health. I've been vindicated by the courts, and I was granted whistleblower protection, meaning I can't be blackballed from any employer. And there's other things I can't even talk about due to some decisions in the courts. But my first attack spiraled from a speech that I gave. And when I was in the Air Force on active duty, I stated in my speech that I worked in bioenvironmental engineering. Now, all of you can Google Air Force AFSC, which stands for Air Force Specialty Code. If you Google my Air Force Specialty Code, AFSC 4B071, it says bioenvironmental engineering. The problem with that is even though I had degrees at the time, I was enlisted. And the attacks began by a similar computer tech guy saying that I should not be believed because I claimed I was an engineer. No disrespect to engineers. I have 9 years of college and I have more schooling than an engineer. I've never claimed to be an engineer. I worked in bioenvironmental engineering. I engineer out hazards. Engineer can be described as not just a noun. And you get to a point where you don't want to have to attack every single person, but I started to correct people and it was burning me out. I was like, please don't say I'm an engineer. I'm not an engineer, because if you falsely claim my credentials, people will think it's me lying. Yeah. So that's how these things spiral out of control. Yeah. So if you're sharing videos or you're sharing, because this was not, for me, it did not start as a malicious intent. Somebody ripped and reshared my speech, but took it that way that I was an engineer. So they didn't do it maliciously, but you have to be careful when you're sharing someone's credentials. Please do so correctly. And it just, I see how it spirals out of control. And instead of these people like reaching out to the individual to say, hey, do you want to clarify this? This could have been a great interview. This could have been a great learning.
I'm about to do a hit piece on you. Would you like to clarify?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, no, it could have been. It could have been a great conversation, and I would have educated him on all of this.
The rumors are true. No, sorry.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I think that, we've kind of punched back enough to, at least if you can all share this video with those who have spread this around, at least it will just expose and address the issues and the problems that he has created really out of nothing. I don't think it's a problem. It's just, it's not okay for him to do what he's doing. It's just not okay.
It's not only unprofessional, it's harmful.
Yeah. It is.
That's where we have an issue.
Right. You're right.
When opinions cause harm to someone's livelihood or reputation, that's when we have to say, please stop. So please stop.
And that's why I got my attorney involved, because he picked with the wrong girl. He picked on the wrong girl. That's for sure. You'd think he would know better, but he doesn't. People didn't know who I was last July, and that's what he's focusing on, that one video. And he just keeps going and keeps making more and more out of it and digging for stuff on me. So anyway, all right, you guys. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you letting me come chat with you and
Our
just
TED
explain.
Talk? No.
Yes, it kind of was, right? Now you're all very educated on ASHRAE and HVAC standards and PPE and all of that. So hanging out with us, you get a great education. So we will chat soon. Kristen and I are going to be doing more. That podcast that we have, we've got to get back to that. There's just, we're so pulled. We're both dealing with a lot of court cases right now. I
honestly think that's why we're such good friends, because sometimes when you have to cancel or reorganize, people think you're flaky, but we know how, like our profession, you think your day is set and then a phone call comes in and you're derailed trying to deal with a hazard or issue or request for a court case.
And it's all very, very important stuff, right? The work I'm doing with Stand Up Michigan and then trying to help people, these court cases, we don't make any money off of this. Kristen and I do not make money for doing the work that we're doing.
Wait, we have to disclose. We've gotten free t-shirts.
Well, yeah, we did.
We got a free shirt in Texas.
A couple of cool stuff, a couple of cool things. But my point is, we don't charge for this. If somebody gives us something, that's fine. But we don't charge for this.
We don't request compensation for doing our jobs in this aspect. So,
and we have really both financially taken quite a hit to do this work. So,
absolutely.
But it's very, very important to us. Our freedoms, your freedoms, are the most important thing to us, because if people like us who are able to stand up and fight don't, who's going to? So we don't have a boss that can fire us, and that's why we're speaking up. And we recognize that it is a huge sacrifice in many ways. But if we don't maintain our freedoms, nothing else is going to matter. So that's why we're fighting for all of you, and we appreciate you. You'll be seeing and hearing from us again more soon. We'll talk about the letter that we sent, the open public letter that we sent. I did send that out in a Facebook post today. That I think was very impactful. So we'll come back and chat more about that. I do want to get a little bit more feedback on that from the school boards before maybe we talk about it on air. But anyway, all right. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And please share this video with anybody who may have sent you that stupid hit piece that Adam Grant, the science guy, created. And we'll talk with you all soon. Love you guys.
Stay safe.